B-2 stealth bomber. It once cost only $350 million to buy one. The cost of each B-2 is now approaching $870 million. The B-2 bomber, the focus of intense political debate now that the Cold War is over and the federal government is trying to reduce its budget deficit. Forces are mobilized on both sides of this issue. What will happen to this nearly billion-dollar aircraft? The American people have differing views on this subject.
Certainly the B-2 and nuclear weapons will keep us safe.
I think that they could do with one or two, but to have fleets of them, it's too much money spent for too little return.
Is the B-2 worth its cost? This week, America's Defense Monitor charts the soaring costs of the stealth bomber. America's Defense Monitor. A weekly program on the military and international affairs that affect you, your family, and people throughout the world. Here is your host, Admiral Jean Larocque.
Welcome once again to America's Defense Monitor. Last year, before the Iraq War, the House of Representatives, after careful deliberation, decided to kill the strategic B-2 stealth bomber. During the Iraq War, the stealth fighter planes seem to have some success, and there are many now who are urging that new life be put into the strategic bomber program. Certainly the defense contractors and the Air Force are urging the Congress to continue this program. We, the American public, ought to have something to say about whether or not that program should be continued. I think today our program, which covers the whole B-2 bomber saga and its potential for the future, will be very illuminating to you and help you to make up your own mind.
The B-2 is what is known as a manned penetrating bomber. A manned penetrating bomber is designed to fly to a country, enter its airspace, and allow the crew to drop bombs on designated targets. Manned bombers delivered the first and only nuclear bombs ever detonated in wartime to Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. Since the end of World War II, the U.S. military has built several new generations of bombers to haul nuclear weapons to their targets. The U.S. Air Force already has almost 350 manned bombers that can carry nuclear bombs and short-range nuclear missiles to the Soviet Union in case of nuclear war. Some U.S. bombers are armed with long-range cruise missiles. Cruise missiles allow a plane's crew to deliver their bombs without entering another country's airspace. The newest of U.S. bombers, the B-1B, was recently bought by the Air Force. All 97 of them are now deployed. The U.S. military also has over 7,500 nuclear warheads on land-based missiles and on submarines at sea. The Air Force's main reason for buying the B-2 is to use it in a nuclear war. Long after U.S. land and sea-based ballistic missiles have destroyed much of the Soviet Union in the war, B-2s are supposed to sweep through and destroy any targets missed by the initial strike. There is a special quality to the B-2. It is supposed to be able to hide from enemy radar. The B-2's unique flying wing design and radar-evading skin are designed to deflect radar signals, making it very difficult to detect and track. The engines were designed to cut down on exhaust heat. This would make them harder to track with heat-seeking infrared sensors. Because of these features, it has been dubbed the stealth bomber. Whether the plane will work as advertised is still uncertain. The B-2's testing program will not be completed for at least 3 more years. Why build a stealthy bomber? The Air Force's argument is that sometime in the future, Soviet air defenses will improve so much that our current bombers will not be able to get to their targets. Soviet batteries of surface-to-air missiles and interceptor fighter aircraft would shoot down U.S. bombers, says the Air Force. The goal of hitting every target in the Soviet Union with a nuclear warhead could not be met. The B-2 is supposed to change all that. Donald Rice is the Secretary of the Air Force. It is his job to oversee and promote the B-2 program.
Successive administrations and Congresses have supported the development and deployment of this system because of the cold, pragmatic recognition that stealth technology is the most significant military technology to appear since the advent of radar and the atomic bomb, and one in which the United States enjoys an unprecedented lead.
The future of the B-2 is in question. Political changes in Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union and tight budgets at home have combined to build strong opposition to the B-2 bomber. Senator John Glenn is skeptical about the B-2's mission.
I always have thought, I've backed the triad concept, but I've always thought it was a little bit weak in that if we really get into an all-out nuclear exchange, we really have ICBMs going, SLBMs going, Alcoms, Slickums, everything else going back and forth, nuclear explosions going off all over the place, targets that we've had selected for a long time under attack, that to then, with all that exchange already going on, that we would then send a manned bomber in addition to all of that. I've always thought that was a little weak.
So not everybody agrees on the need for a new strategic bomber. Some are still unsure about their position on the issue, like Congressman Norman Sisiski of the House Armed Services Committee.
I'm one of the members of this committee who's not made up his mind on a B-2 bomber. I really have not. I look at it as a great policy decision on the part of this committee, because if we do indeed kill the B-2 bomber, I think it may be the end of manned bombers as we've known them, and I don't take this lightly.
Criticism of the B-2's high costs, the uncertainty of its mission, and many other political factors have clouded the plane's future. Representative John Kasich, an influential Republican member of the House Armed Services Committee, has been one of the leaders in the fight against the B-2. He sees no need to build another new strategic weapon system right now. He co-sponsored a bill in Congress to terminate production of the stealth bomber.
Since Reagan was president, and I fought for all of them, we've developed the MX, the B-1, the D-5. Let's kill one of the big-ticket strategic items. We've developed 4 new systems in the last 10 years.
Representative Les Aspin, the powerful chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, challenged the Air Force in 1989 to convince him of the necessity of the B-2. The Air Force didn't. Now he wants to kill it.
The deficit is growing and the defense budget is shrinking. Much has happened in the last year, and none of it has been good for the B-2.
The House of Representatives has voted to cancel the B-2 for the 2nd consecutive year. However, the Senate voted to fund the B-2 and prevailed in budget negotiations with the House last year. It is likely that the Senate will approve the President's $4.5 billion request to buy 4 new bombers this year. Over the past few years, the B-2 program has undergone a lot of change. In April 1990, Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney conducted a review of the 4 major aircraft that the Air Force and Navy want to buy in the 1990s. He proposed to cut the B-2 back from the original request of 132 planes to 75. This cut was made to save money while revitalizing the manned strategic bomber program.
Question, why 75 aircraft? Why not 40 or 86? The basic rationale is that 75 aircraft gives you what we think is a deployable, manageable asset. That does save money in 91. This is one of the few decisions that does, and it saves a little over $9 billion out of the FIDEP, about $1.4 billion almost in 91 as a result of that decision.
Congressman Kasich finds fault with the reduction to 75 B-2s.
Let me tell you where I think this proposal is in trouble, and I think if you were still in the House, you would probably agree. I think what we're doing in this proposal is exactly what cheap hawks say we should never do. We're cutting a little bit, and we're stretching a lot. And I'm saying to you that America's national security, its economic security, needs a hard choice to be made.
While Secretary Cheney's decision to stop B-2 production at 75 planes reduced the total program cost by almost $10 billion, the price per plane jumped by almost $200 million. Since the April 1990 aircraft review, the B-2's price tag has risen again to over $870 million per plane, and the price keeps rising. The costs of a major weapons system do not stop once the system is bought and paid for. To operate and maintain a fleet of 75 B-2s for their 30-year lifespan would cost about $65 billion. This money would go to spare parts, fuel, and training. When added to the $64 billion to buy the planes, this money, known as the Operations and Support Budget, would bump the cost of the B-2 program to over $130 billion. This would raise the cost of buying and operating a single B-2 for 30 years to well over $1.5 billion. A strong consensus among the B-2's critics has developed around the cost issue. Representative Charles Bennett is a veteran member of the House Armed Services Committee.
But I'm curious about the B-2, whether it wouldn't be a wiser thing not to go ahead with production and instead use the planes that we now have for testing and go to the production later on. And the reason why I asked this question is because of the imponderable, tremendous amounts of money either for the overall program or the unit cost.
Congressman Aspen puts the B-2 in a larger perspective within the whole military budget. To maintain other military programs and quality personnel, he thinks the B-2 ought to go.
These programs were designed for a growing defense budget. They would be hard to fit in a flat defense budget. They are impossible in a sharply shrinking defense budget. Something has got to give. If the threats we faced internationally were greater and the deficits we faced at home were smaller, we might continue to hedge on the B-2. But they aren't, and we can't.
Secretary Cheney finds it is more difficult than that.
The fact of the matter is, I mean, if there was something big and easy out there to go cancel to save money, I'd say great. But these aren't easy questions.
General Lawrence Welch was the Air Force Chief of Staff from 1986 to 1990. He thinks the B-2's cost takes a back seat to what the bomber has to offer as a weapon.
I would repeat the irrelevance of that to discussions about the future. That decision, it seems to me, should be based on the deterrent value and other contributions of the B-2 provided by the remaining investment.
But Congressman Kasich disagrees.
And so after we spend $23 billion, the proponents of the program say, well, we got to continue forward. We laid all this money out there. Now, I guess they'd never been to a roulette table, because if you go to a roulette table, I've never been at one, but I think this is a good analogy. If you lay a lot of money out at the roulette table and you go to Las Vegas with $2,000 and you lay out $1,500 and you lose all that, based on the logic with the B-2, I guess you got to lose the other $500 in order to walk away from the roulette table. I think you walk away from the table when you're losing, and I believe the B-2 is a loser.
The B-2's mission has also come under fire. What is this bomber supposed to do? To get past the sticker shock over the high cost per plane, the Air Force promotes the B-2 as useful for other kinds of missions besides bombing the Soviets.
B-2s could strike any location on the planet from secure bases within a matter of hours, thus providing exceptional deterrence. No adversary could remain beyond the reach of our B-2 force. The B-2 will therefore be one of the nation's premier power projection assets in an era in which that sort of capability will become even more important.
The Secretary of Defense, on the other hand, denies the B-2 as being bought for its conventional bombing ability.
In terms of conventional capability, I think it's important to emphasize that we're not buying the B-2 for its conventional capability. It is being purchased specifically as part of our PSYOP capability to deliver strategic nuclear weapons.
Congressman Kasich does not buy the argument that the B-2 could be used for conventional bombing missions.
Now, you may say we're not trying to use this in a conventional way, but I will tell you that the defense contractors are, and their most powerful argument with my colleagues is we should use it conventionally. We have the F-15 Eagle, the F-111, the A-6, the stealth fighter, the advanced tactical aircraft, the ATF. We don't need the B-2 to do conventional things. If we do, then you better get rid of some of these other systems.
One argument for keeping the B-2 alive is that we've spent too much on it to stop now.
I still think we need the B-2. I think we've got a lot invested in it. I think we ought to go ahead and complete that program. Instead of saying, in effect, we poured $30 billion down a rat hole, because that's what you've spent, $27 billion on the B-2 now, to end up with, to say you're going to have 15 or 16 aircraft, that's a meaningless number. There's not anything you can do with 15 or 16 aircraft.
But Congressman Kasich disagrees.
Development side. Don't say that if we shut it down now we haven't benefited from it. I want to finish the R&D. But why not, as a fiscal conservative, which you are, hold those fixed targets at risk by using a system with a fraction of the cost?
Some in Congress believe that the decision to cut the size of the stealth bomber program was more of a political than a military decision.
We were told a very short period ago, and I know the chairman asked about this at the beginning of the hearing, that we had to have 132 absolutely essential. And then, of course, it miraculously dropped to 75. And I think the real truth is you were just trying to anticipate the Congress, and this is figured, well, this is about what we're going to get. We might as well cut our losses and go to that.
Others in Congress, like Representative Bob Davis, have applauded Secretary Cheney's decision to cut the B-2 program back to 75 planes.
Mr. Secretary, let me say that I think you have given us a very defendable position. 75 B-2s, I think, is something that we can sell to the Congress and the American people.
The idea of a flying wing bomber is not a new one, but early models of this type of aircraft were too unstable in flight to justify production for the military. The flying wing came back, however. Some believe the B-2 was thought up in the 1970s for political reasons. Tom Amley, a respected senior civilian analyst in the Air Force, explains the B-2's political roots.
Jimmy Carter wanted to stop the B-1, and politically he couldn't do it, except by inventing something that was so much better than the B-1, then he could have an excuse to shelve the B-1, and he did. And now, of course, we have the B-1 back again, and we have a Republican bomber, the B-1, a Democratic bomber, the B-2, a Republican missile, the MX, and a Democratic missile, the Midgetman. None of them make any sense.
Major weapons systems like the B-2 take on a life of their own and are incredibly hard to stop. The lobbying and public relations departments of the major defense contractors can mobilize strong support to save their contracts. Dina Razor is the founder and first director of the nonprofit Project on Military Procurement, which has exposed many Pentagon abuses.
And then you get the power, the lobbying power of two very strong contractors and all their subcontractors that makes it even harder to stop. Once a weapon system gets that kind of constituency, one congressional staffer one time likened it to me as to a freight train weapon system. It gets slow to get started, but once it gets momentum, it's very hard to stop, and it just rolls.
Politics and jobs have a lot to do with the battle over the B-2. Many of the stealth bomber's strongest congressional supporters have major military production facilities and bases in their home districts. The congressional delegations of big and powerful states like Texas and California stand to gain a lot in jobs and defense dollars from B-2 production. Pork barrel politics have kept many military programs and bases alive. In 1989, Congress overturned Secretary Cheney's decision to cancel the Navy's F-14 fighter program. Congressmen and senators found a way to keep the defense dollars flowing to Long Island, where the plane is made. One tactic to ensure political support for a major weapons system is to subcontract the work across the nation, giving many members of Congress a vested interest in the program.
Most weapon systems, I think they said that the B-2, the stealth bomber, was like 47, 46, 47. You try as much as possible to make sure it's built all over the United States, so everyone in the United States has a stake in it.
The stealth bomber has been used by both its supporters and opponents in media campaigns. Famous test pilot Chuck Yeager has hit the airwaves in support of the B-2, and the Air Force uses the plane to attract potential recruits.
Now you see it. Now you don't.
Negative contact. Sorry, nothing up there but sky.
So if you want a career in tomorrow's technology, take a close look at the Air Force. Because sometimes the biggest opportunities
Still nothing, sir.
are the hardest to see. Aim high. Air Force.
Compare the Air Force's message with this one from the Union of Concerned Scientists.
The Pentagon wants 75 stealth bombers, planes we don't need. But did you know the cost of one bomber, $815 million, could pay the tuition for every student at the University of New Mexico for 36 years? Also, $815 million is 3 times more than the federal government will spend altogether this year on New Mexico's schools, law enforcement, environment, and roads and bridges. The stealth bomber, a mistake we can't afford.
A major factor in the fate of the stealth bomber is the performance of the plane's manufacturer, the Northrop Corporation. During the Reagan defense buildup of the 1980s, Northrop received over $35 billion in military contracts. Unfortunately for U.S. airmen and taxpayers, many of Northrop's weapons systems do not work as advertised. The negligence of the Northrop Corporation was the subject of a recent hearing by a subcommittee of the House Energy and Commerce Committee. Representative Jerry Sikorsky said of Northrop that they've got a laundry list of bad actions, and they're making things that aren't tables and chairs. They're making things that are actively part of the national security of this country. Everything from the all-out nuclear exchange to the support of a few grunts in some special project. The Department of Justice has charged Northrop with falsification of test results for the guidance system of the MX missile and electronic components of both the air-launched cruise missile and the Marines' Harrier jump jet. The B-2 is also the subject of this ongoing investigation. Northrop is alleged to have falsified scheduling and cost analyses. The voice of ordinary Americans, as well as of the experts, should be heard on this subject. America's Defense Monitor solicited their views as they visited the nation's capital.
We can't get enough of defense. It seems that we put out way too much money, and I think this is just another one of the things that's going to kind of sit around for a while without us ever using it, and I think we can divert those funds to more needy causes such as education or in the environment.
Do you think we should buy them?
Sure. They're spending so much money for this thing, and then, 2 years down the road, they're going to figure out some way of making it visible to radar, and then its purpose is completely defeated.
What impact has the war in the Persian Gulf had on the B-2's future? Supporters point to the success of the F-117 stealth fighter as evidence that stealth technology works, and that the Air Force must have the B-2 to maintain a technological edge over the other militaries of the world.
We think the B-2 continues to be an extremely important program, not only because of the strategic requirements of the U.S., but there has been a lot of debate, I know, in the Congress over the wisdom of the B-2 program. It's been a hard-fought subject every year. One of the lessons that comes out of our experience in the Gulf is that stealth works.
In any case, there should be some caution against equating the F-117 with the B-2. The Air Force has been working on the stealth fighter for over 15 years. Ample time to develop and test this high-tech weapon. The 3 stealth bombers that are able to fly right now have spent only about 150 hours in the air. Other experts say that the F-117, developed for use against the Soviet Union, probably was not needed against a relatively weak foe. A huge armada of U.S. and Allied bombers and fighters is deployed against Iraq. Another point skeptics raise is that the success of the Navy's Tomahawk cruise missile has made buying a new man-penetrating bomber to enter an adversary's airspace unnecessary. So what will happen to the stealth bomber? The Air Force notes that it can buy 60 more B-2s for only $35 billion. This year, the Air Force is requesting over $4.5 billion to buy 4 new B-2s. As the costs keep rising, will other military and civilian programs be able to keep up? The nation could buy a lot of things for $35 billion. In 10 years, Will the American people be glad they bought the B-2 or wish they hadn't?
Well, that's a good question. Should we build this B-2 bomber or not? Well, if you look at it from the point of view of whether or not we need a B-2 strategic bomber to haul still more nuclear weapons to the Soviet Union, I'd say the answer is no. If we look at the price tag for this proposed strategic bomber at about $870 million per airplane, it's too expensive. But this aircraft, the B-2, simply epitomizes the basic decision we Americans ought to be making today. Do we want, at the end of the Cold War, to continue to buy weapons as if we were still planning, training, arming, and practicing to fight a war with the Soviet Union? Or do we want to devote our energies and our resources to more constructive components here in the United States? The decision's up to you and to me. Until next time, for America's Defense Monitor, I'm Gene LaRocque.
I think that the B-2 carries us down the road towards defending ourselves against a threat that doesn't exist. I think it's a threat that's 25 years old. It's an Edsel threat. It's simply not there anymore. And what we ought to be doing is taking the money from a program like B-2, and we ought to be putting it into conventional systems that allows us to be successful against the most likely threat, the Saddam Husseins, the Kim Il-sungs in North Korea. See, nuclear weapons were never an issue in Iraq. We did not defeat Saddam Hussein because we were going to use nuclear weapons or we had nuclear systems. We defeated Saddam Hussein because we had incredibly capable conventional systems. And I would opt for a conventional roadmap rather than a strategic one. If we're going to worry about blowing the Soviets up with more than 12,000 strategic warheads, which I think is absurd. If you ask any intelligent person around and say, how many nuclear weapons does it take to destroy the Soviet Union? I mean, I hear, well, maybe a couple hundred. We have 12,000 of them. What we face is what Eisenhower warned us about, the military-industrial complex.
Next on OPB, the new season of Newton's Apple begins in the U.S. Olympic Training Center with David Heil and Peggy Knapp.
It goes into people's districts and tries to stoke up the veterans groups and stoke up the corner barbershops. We had one congressman that got a call from one of these, that it was a result of the PR efforts of Northrop, that got a call from